Welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr, and we're welcoming back Juan Zarate, as we always do, our national security analyst. Juan.
Bob, great being with you. Thank you.
Let's talk about this Israel-Hamas showdown. The Israelis went in on the ground. They said this was going to be quick and surgical and kind of pinpointed. Now we're seeing losses mount on both sides.
Yeah, this is getting messier, Bob, and we talked about this before. The real challenge for the Israelis is twofold. One, how to maintain the moral high ground, which for a time they had, with Hamas rejecting the ceasefire, with continuing rocket shelling into Israeli territory, but with the numbers going up of civilian casualties among the Palestinians, now over 550 or so, with images of children being killed or caught in crossfire, they start to lose the moral high ground. The second issue is, how do they get out, right? We talked about this before. Does this become a quagmire? They went in to go after the tunnels, these tunnels that Hamas had built and had been using to move men and materiel, including into Israel for hostage-taking purposes. Well, how do they get out? How do they get out now? Now we're seeing that the Israelis are taking casualties, with Hamas ambushing and going after the forces that are now in Gaza. So it's a real delicate moment, and for American diplomacy, a moment to try to demonstrate that we want there to be a common caution while also demonstrating support for Israel.
Now, the United States, over and over again, we've heard from the President, from the Secretary of State, they've defended Israel's right to defend themselves against these rocket attacks coming from Gaza. But you sense there's real frustration here inside the administration about the way this is unfolding on the ground. This thing is spinning out of control.
Yeah, and you've seen it in the president's remarks. They've gotten tougher and tougher in terms of asking Israel to moderate its position and what it's doing. And it's, I think, a real challenge as the moral high ground is lost. The United States realizes that this can't persist. You can't imagine, for example, Israeli occupation of Gaza with these kinds of casualty rates continuing. That's just not sustainable. So that's why Secretary Kerry has gone out. He's going to be talking to the Egyptians, going to be talking to the Israelis, talking to the Palestinians, no doubt, and trying to find some way forward, at a minimum a ceasefire, if not in a maximalist way, some solution here.
Now, away from the public talking points, what do you suspect the message is in the back channels to the Israeli government? What are we telling them?
I think two things. One, what's your exit plan? Help us help you figure out what that looks like, because you can't be in there for a long time. You can't persist in this sort of heavy-handed way. You're starting to lose world opinion. It's going to be difficult. So that's one thing. What is that exit plan? How can we help? The second thing is, you need to the extent that this is intended to be surgical, you need to make sure that that's the case. You've heard, I think, some frustration from Secretary Kerry off camera that what is supposed to be a surgical strike or a surgical set of operations by the Israelis looks a lot blunter than it is. And so making sure that what the Israelis are doing is exactly that, being as precise as possible, going after the rocket launchers, going after Hamas operatives. The Israelis, of course, are going to say, look, we have difficulty doing that in a very congested environment where Hamas purposely uses civilians as a shield. But I think the U.S. is worried about the imagery, the loss of moral high ground, and how do you get out of this?
And with Secretary Kerry going to the region now for these talks, is there any chance this thing can take a pause and we can find some kind of diplomatic channel to get back to?
Perhaps. I think there's been a lot of criticism of Hamas for not taking the ceasefire and the peace deal that the Egyptians had negotiated and proposed. Maybe that will take some hold, but I think Hamas is in this fight for the long term, of course, and I think they are seeing some advantage to having the Israelis fight in Gaza. They're able to kill Israelis, now up to 27 IDF soldiers. And so I'm not sure Hamas has the incentive currently to actually stop fighting.
One we have to watch.
Constantly, unfortunately.
Juan, thanks as always.
Thank you, Bob.
And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.